You know how some numbers just get skipped? 13, for instance, or sometimes an entire floor in a building. But what if it's just one room? A room that really shouldn't be there, tucked away, out of order, whispering an invitation that only a few can hear. They say curiosity killed the cat, right? Well, in the shadowy halls of the Blackwood Hotel, it does something much, much worse. It signs you up for a permanent stay. The Blackwood Hotel wasn't exactly popping up on those curated travel blogs Liam and Chloe usually scrolled through. They were urban explorers, you see, real connoisseurs of the forgotten and the eerie. They craved something authentic, a real break from the polished, almost sterile feel of modern travel. So the Blackwood, with its Gothic face and whispers of a colorful, if a bit unsettling past, it sounded perfect. It loomed on the forgotten edge of a town that had clearly seen better days, a massive silhouette against a sky that always seemed to be gray. Its stained glass windows looked like clouded eyes, watching the world with this weary, ancient gaze. Locals would talk about it in hushed tones, a place of strange happenings, and a guest register that some swore had names going back over a century with very few checkout dates written beside them. Liam, ever the skeptic, dismissed these tales as local superstition, just good material for his next online article. Chloe, though, she felt a little prickle of unease, this subtle wrongness she couldn't quite shake. It was still there, even as they pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped into the dimly lit lobby. The air inside was thick, smelling of dust, old wood, and something else. Something you couldn't quite put your finger on, like old secrets and faded regrets. The receptionist, a gaunt man with eyes that just seemed to soak up the light, offered them a room on the third floor. "Room 312, he'd rasped, his voice like dry leaves blowing across pavement. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The hotel itself seemed to offer its own chilling welcome. Their first few days were this strange mix of digging into history and a slow, creeping dread. The Blackwood was a maze, winding corridors, unexpected little nooks, and staircases that seemed to go nowhere useful. Dust motes danced in the tiny slivers of light that managed to sneak past the heavy velvet curtains. Portraits of stern-faced people from ages ago lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to follow Liam and Chloe as they explored. The silence was deep, only broken by the creak of floorboards under their feet and the occasional distant rumble that might have been the ancient plumbing, or maybe something else. Liam was totally in his element, camera clicking away, his notebook filling up. Chloe, on the other hand, found herself getting more and more unnerved. She'd catch these fleeting movements out of the corner of her eye, hear whispers that vanished the second she tried to focus on them. The hotel felt, well, aware. It happened on their fourth night. Liam was lost in an old ledger he'd unearthed in the hotel's library, a dusty, forgotten room packed with decaying books. Chloe, feeling restless, decided to explore the third floor a bit more thoroughly. She usually had a great sense of direction, but the Blackwood's layout was deliberately confusing. Corridors seemed to subtly shift, angles changing, making it impossible to keep a mental map. She was tracing the faded floral wallpaper with her fingers, counting doors. Room 310, 311, 312. Then, nothing. Just a blank stretch of wall where 313 should logically be. Then, further down, 314. Chloe frowned. She knew most old hotels were superstitious about the number 13. It's pretty common for them to skip room 13 or floor 13 because of bad luck. So, number 313 wasn't totally out of the blue. But as she ran her hand along that blank wall space, her fingers brushed against something, a faint, almost invisible seam in the wallpaper, a line so fine you could barely see it in the dim hallway light. Her heart started to pound. She pressed gently. The section of wall gave just a tiny bit with this soft, sighing sound, like a breath held for way too long. It wasn't a door, not really. More like a panel, cleverly hidden. Her curiosity, now a burning feeling in her chest, completely took over her unease. She pushed harder. The panels silently swung inwards, revealing not a room, but a narrow, unlit opening. And from inside, a faint, almost silent hum, and a smell. A strange, cloying sweetness mixed with the metallic tang of old blood and something else, something ancient and cold. Pinned almost invisibly to the dark wood of the panel's inner side was a small, tarnished brass plate. On it, beautifully engraved, was a single number, 0, room 0, a room numbered out of sequence, a room that, if you looked at the hotel's layout, just shouldn't exist. Those urban legends Liam usually scoffed at? They often featured impossible rooms, spaces that defied all logic. This felt like stepping right into one of those stories. The tales they'd heard from the townfolk, the ones they'd brushed off, an extra room, a place where guests go mad, a place people check into but never leave. Suddenly, they all felt chillingly real. Liam, when she went to get him, was skeptical at first, naturally, but the undeniable reality of that hidden opening, it definitely piqued his journalistic senses. The receptionist hadn't said a word about any room 0. This was a story, a big one. Armed with flashlights and a sense of trespassing that was both thrilling and terrifying, they looked at each other. No words needed. They had to see what was inside. "Ready?" Liam whispered, his voice tight with a mix of excitement and a little bit of fear. Chloe nodded, her throat too dry to say anything. That faint hum from inside the opening seemed to be calling them, a siren song for the curious. It was a sound that vibrated deep in their bones, hitting some primal curiosity that was tough to ignore. Liam pushed the panel further open. It moved with this eerie, well-oiled silence, like it was used to secret visitors. He shone his flashlight into the darkness beyond. It didn't light up a room, not right away. Instead, it showed a short, narrow corridor, no more than 10 feet long, ending in what looked like a heavy, dark wooden door. Totally plain, no handle or keyhole visible from their side. The air that drifted out was colder now, carrying that same unsettling sweet metallic scent, stronger here, almost sickly. Chloe felt this powerful urge to pull Liam back, to slide the panel shut and just forget they'd ever found this place. The hotel already felt like a living thing, and this hidden passage seemed like a vein leading straight to its dark, beating heart. But Liam was already taking a step forward, his journalist instincts kicking in over any budding fear. "Come on," he murmured. "We've come this far. Hesitantly, Chloe followed. The moment they both stepped over the threshold from the main hallway into the narrow passage, the panel behind them swung shut with a soft, definite click. The sound was unnervingly final. They were now in a pocket of silence. The usual creaks and groans of the old hotel were completely gone. Liam tried the panel. It wouldn't budge. It was as if it had sealed itself into the wall, the seam vanishing like it had never even been there. A sliver of panic, cold and sharp, cut through Chloe's apprehension. "Liam, it's stuck." He jiggled it, pushed, then gave it a light shoulder charge. "Nothing. Odd," he muttered, though his voice was a little strained. "Must be a mechanism on the other side. Let's check out the room first. Maybe the way out is through there." The door at the end of the short passage loomed before them. As they got closer, Liam reached out. His fingers had barely brushed the ancient wood when it slowly, silently swung inward, opening into absolute darkness. The hum intensified, and that strange scent washed over them, thick and disorienting. It was an invitation, a challenge. And with a shared glance that said, "Well, no turning back now," they stepped inside room 0. The darkness inside room 0 was absolute, like a physical thing that seemed to just swallow the beams of their flashlights, reducing them to weak, trembling circles. The air was thick, heavy, and hard to breathe, like the atmosphere of a place that had been sealed up for centuries. That strange, sweet, metallic odor was overpowering now, making Chloe gag. "Hello," Liam called out, his voice sounding small, absorbed by the oppressive blackness. Only the faint, constant hum answered, seeming to come from the very walls around them. As their eyes slowly, painfully started to adjust, the dim outline of a room began to take shape out of the void. It was surprisingly ordinary, yet deeply unsettling. The furniture was sparse, antique, draped in dust cloths that looked like sleeping shrouds. A four-poster bed, a heavy wardrobe, a dressing table with a cracked mirror. But the proportions felt all wrong. The ceiling seemed too high, the walls too close together. The angles of the room were subtly off, creating this disorienting, almost nauseating effect. Chloe's flashlight beam caught something on the far wall. Wallpaper. Faded, peeling, showing a repeating pattern of what looked like faces. Distorted, screaming faces, their eyes wide with some unnameable terror, woven into a grotesque floral design. She gasped, stumbling back a step. Liam rushed to her side. "What is it?" Then he saw it too. My God. As they stared, one of the faces on the wallpaper seemed to blink. Chloe let out a small, choked cry. Liam grabbed her arm, his own flashlight shaking. It's the light," he said, his voice totally lacking conviction. A trick of the light. But the room had only just begun its welcome. They decided to explore, sticking close together. The door they had entered through? Gone. Simply gone. Where it had been, there was now a solid wall, covered in the same hideous wallpaper. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw at Chloe. Liam, though visibly shaken, tried to keep it together. "There has to be another way out. Windows, another door." There were no windows, just four walls closing in. The hum intensified, and the temperature in the room plummeted. Chloe could see her breath misting in the flashlight beam. A low chuckle seemed to echo around them, sourceless and full of malice. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then the room began to change. It started subtly. The wardrobe, which had been against the far wall, now seemed to be a few feet closer. A small porcelain doll that hadn't been there before sat perched on the edge of the dusty bed, its painted eyes fixed on them. Chloe felt a prickle of pure dread. The doll's smile was too wide, its eyes too knowing. "Did you see that doll before?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Liam shook his head, his eyes darting around the room. No, I don't think so." They decided to systematically search for an exit, running their hands along the walls, tapping for hollow sounds. The wallpaper felt strangely warm to the touch, almost pulsing like skin. Each time they completed a circuit of the room, something new would be different. The bed shifted position. The pattern on the wallpaper seemed to writhe and rearrange itself, the screaming faces twisting into new expressions of agony. Objects appeared and disappeared. A child's rocking horse swaying gently in the corner as if recently ridden. A grandfather clock, its hands spinning wildly backwards. A tarnished silver locket on the floor, snapping open to reveal nothing but a dark, empty space. The psychological torment was relentless. Whispers skittered at the edge of their hearing, their names, bits of their past conversations, fears they'd never said out loud. The room seemed to be mining their minds, pulling out their deepest anxieties and making them real. Liam, who prided himself on his rationality, started seeing fleeting images of his deceased father, beckoning him from the shadows. Chloe saw spiders, her lifelong phobia, scuttling in the corners of her vision, always just out of direct sight. Time became meaningless. Their watches had stopped, frozen at the exact moment they'd entered room 0. Hours, or maybe days, could have passed in the suffocating, ever-shifting confines of the room. Hunger gnawed at them, thirst parched their throats, but the fear was a more potent, all-consuming force. Their attempts to contact the outside world were useless. Their phones had no signal, only displaying a screen full of static that sometimes resolved itself into one of the screaming faces from the wallpaper. Shouting for help only resulted in the room seeming to absorb their voices, the silence afterwards becoming even more profound, more mocking. On what they guessed was their second or third day, a new door appeared. Or rather, an old door, its wood splintered and scarred, a heavy iron knocker in the shape of a skeletal hand. Hope, fragile and desperate, surged through them. Liam rushed towards it, Chloe close behind. He gripped the cold iron of the knocker, ready to pull it, but hesitated. What if it's not an exit? Chloe breathed. What if it just leads deeper? The room seemed to delight in their indecision. A cold laugh echoed around them, and the skeletal hand on the knocker slowly clenched into a fist, then unfurled one bony finger, beckoning them forward. Liam, driven by a desperate need for escape, threw the door open. It didn't lead out. It led into an exact replica of the room they were already in. The same furniture, the same hideous wallpaper, the same oppressive atmosphere. And standing in the center of this new, identical room were two figures, their backs to them. As Liam and Chloe watched in dawning horror, the figures slowly turned. It was them, Liam and Chloe, or rather grotesque, hollow-eyed doppelgangers, their faces pale and drawn, their clothes tattered. Their mouths opened, and a discordant chorus of screams filled the air, the same screams from the wallpaper. Chloe screamed, a raw, terrified sound. Liam pulled her back, slamming the door shut. He leaned against it, panting, his face ashen. "It's playing with us," he gasped. "It's trying to break us." The room was an entity, a malevolent intelligence, constantly adapting, learning, and refining its methods of torment. It wasn't just a physical space. It was a psychological predator, feeding on their fear, their hope, their sanity. It didn't want to kill them quickly. It wanted to savor their descent into madness. It wanted them to understand that there was no escape. They found a journal tucked beneath the decaying mattress of the four-poster bed. Its pages were brittle, filled with frantic, spidery handwriting from countless previous occupants. Some entries were decades, perhaps centuries old, judging by the script and language. All told a similar story: the discovery of the room, the initial curiosity, the dawning realization of its nature, the changing walls, the psychological torture, the slow erosion of hope. "The room knows what you fear," one entry read. "It watches, it learns, it keeps." Another entry, scrawled in what looked like dried blood, simply said, "We are the new wallpaper." Chloe dropped the journal as if it had burned her. The implications were horrifying. The screaming faces, were they the previous guests? Trapped, their consciousness absorbed into the very fabric of the room? The hunger and thirst became unbearable. And then, as if sensing their desperation, a small, ornate table appeared in the center of the room. On it, a silver platter bearing a single glistening red apple and a crystal goblet filled with clear water. Chloe stared at it, her parched throat aching. Liam looked suspicious. "Don't touch it," he warned. "It's a trap." "It has to be." But the apple looked so perfect, the water so inviting. Chloe's stomach cramped painfully. Hours passed. The apple and water remained untouched, a silent temptation. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Eventually, the physical need became too great. Chloe, her hands trembling, reached for the goblet. Liam tried to stop her, but the fight had gone out of him. He was slumped against a wall, his eyes vacant, staring at a point on the ceiling where a fresh cobweb-like crack was slowly, deliberately spreading. Chloe took a sip. The water was cool, refreshing. She took another, then drank it all. She reached for the apple, its skin smooth and cool beneath her fingers. She took a bite. It was the sweetest, most delicious apple she had ever tasted. A moment later, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The room began to spin. The hum intensified to a deafening roar. The faces on the wallpaper seemed to leap out, their screams clawing at her ears. She looked at Liam. His eyes were wide with terror, but he wasn't looking at her. He was looking through her. She looked down at her hands. They were becoming translucent, fading. The apple, still clutched in her grip, was the only solid thing about her. A horrifying understanding dawned on Liam as he watched Chloe begin to shimmer and fade, her form becoming ethereal, like smoke in a drafty room. The food, the water, they weren't sustenance, they were a catalyst. The final stage of the room's assimilation process. He scrambled to his feet, a desperate primal scream tearing from his throat, but it was too late for Chloe. Her eyes, wide with a silent, uncomprehending terror, met his for a fleeting second before she dissolved completely, her essence seeming to sigh into the very walls, a faint, sweet scent momentarily perfuming the air before vanishing. The apple dropped from where her hand had been, thudding softly onto the floorboards, perfectly intact. Liam was alone, truly alone. The last bits of his rationality shattered. He was no longer a journalist, an explorer. He was prey, and the hunter was the room itself. The room, as if sensing his utter despair, its final victory, began its most profound transformation yet. The walls themselves seemed to dissolve, not into another identical space, but into a swirling, chaotic vortex of colors, images, and sounds. He saw glimpses of other times, other victims. A terrified Victorian family huddled together. A lone soldier from a forgotten war screaming silently. A young woman in a flapper dress, her laughter turning into a wail of despair. He saw faces, hundreds of them, swirling in the maelstrom, their eyes burning with an eternity of suffering, the true collection of the Blackwood Hotel. And then he saw himself, multiple versions of himself, one hammering futilely against a solid brick wall where a door had been moments before, another curled in a fatal position, weeping, another wild-eyed and gaunt, scrawling frantically in the journal he and Chloe had found. Each one a captured moment of his own descent, a future agony already preordained by the room. The hum reached a fever pitch, vibrating through every cell of his being, shaking his bones, rattling his teeth. The floor beneath him seemed to liquefy, trying to suck him down. He clawed at the shifting, insubstantial walls, his fingers passing through them as if through mist. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The room was everywhere. It was inside him. With a final, ear-splitting crescendo, the vortex solidified. Liam found himself standing in the room once more. But it was different now. Subtly, terribly different. The wallpaper still bore its grotesque faces, but among them, new and raw, was Chloe's, her eyes wide with captured terror, her mouth open in a silent scream that would echo for eternity, and next to her, a blank space. Waiting, the tarnished brass plate he'd seen on the hidden panel, Room 0, now hung on the wall before him, gleaming faintly in an unseen light. Below it, a small, elegant desk had appeared. On the desk lay an old-fashioned hotel register, bound in cracked leather, and a single ornate fountain pen. The register was open to a fresh page. A soft, sibilant whisper, like the rustle of dry leaves, filled the room. It was the voice of the Blackwood itself, ancient, patient, and infinitely hungry. "Welcome, guest. We trust your stay is satisfactory. Please sign in for eternity." Liam stared at the pen, then at the blank space on the wallpaper that was undeniably, terrifyingly shaped for his own tormented visage. He understood now. There was no escape. There never had been. The room didn't just trap its guests. It consumed them, added them to its collection, made them part of its very being. It fed on their despair, their broken sanity becoming the mortar in its ever-shifting walls. His hand, moving as if something else was guiding it, reached for the pen. It felt cold, heavy. The ink in its nib was a deep, disturbing crimson, like freshly spilled blood. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him right to the bone, that this was it, the final act, the ultimate surrender. He could fight it. He could scream, rage, break the pen, destroy the register. But what would be the point? The room had already won. It had taken Chloe. It had broken his mind. Any resistance now would just be a brief, futile delay of what was coming, maybe even an amusing show for his malevolent host. A profound, soul-crushing weariness settled over him. The fight was gone, replaced by a hollow acceptance. He was just another specimen for the collection, another faded photograph in a forgotten album of souls. His eyes drifted to Chloe's face on the wallpaper. Her silent scream was a permanent fixture, a testament to the room's insatiable hunger. He didn't want her to be alone in this gallery of the damned. With a trembling hand, he uncapped the pen. The metallic scent of the ink filled his nostrils, sharp and coppery. He poised the nib over the pristine page of the register. The hum of the room seemed to soften, to almost purr with satisfaction. He thought of their life before the Blackwood, their shared dreams, their adventures. It all seemed like a distant, half-forgotten dream, a story read in a book about someone else's life. This room, this eternal prison, this was the only reality now. He began to write his name, Liam. The letters flowed onto the page in that blood-red ink, each stroke a nail in his coffin. As he wrote, he felt a change within himself, a coldness spreading from his fingertips, up his arm, into his chest. A sense of detaching, of becoming less. Once his signature was complete, a faint, almost imperceptible sigh echoed through room 0. The pen slipped from his now numb fingers, clattering onto the desk. Liam looked at his hands. They were starting to become translucent, just as Chloe's had. The transformation was beginning. He turned to the wallpaper, to the empty space that awaited him beside Chloe. A faint outline was already beginning to appear there, a suggestion of his own features twisted in a silent scream. He was becoming part of the design, another trapped soul woven into the fabric of this malevolent room. The Blackwood Hotel still stands on the forgotten edge of town, its windows like clouded, watching eyes. The gaunt receptionist still mans the front desk, his own eyes absorbing the light, never offering a smile. He doesn't need to. Sometimes new guests arrive, drawn by whispered rumors of a unique experience, of a place untouched by the modern world. They're looking for a story, an adventure. They rarely ask about the out-of-sequence numbers or the faint, almost invisible seam in the wallpaper on the 3rd floor. They don't hear the faint, collective sigh that seems to come from the very walls of the hotel, a sigh of anticipation. Room 0 is always ready. It is patient. It is hungry. And it always wants new guests forever. So, what do you think happened to the other guests whose faces lined those walls? Do you think there are other hidden rooms like Room 0 in forgotten hotels around the world? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want more tales from the places that exist in the shadows, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unsettling narratives. Maybe even share it with someone who enjoys a good creepy hotel story. Just be careful where you book your next stay. You never know what secrets a room might be hiding. Hotels are transient places, right? Filled with the echoes of countless lives. But some, like the Blackwood, are more than just buildings. They're entities with memories and appetites. The legend of the vanishing hotel room, or the room that shouldn't exist, is a persistent one, tapping into our primal fear of the unknown, of spaces that defy logic and prey on the unwary. So the next time you're walking down a dimly lit hotel corridor and you notice an odd gap in the room numbers or a stretch of wall that just doesn't seem right, perhaps it's best to just keep walking. Some doors are best left unopened. Some secrets are best left undisturbed. Because some places don't just want you to visit, they want you to stay permanently.